October 1969, and petty South London villain Michael Perry tips off the newspaper, claiming he is being extorted for money not by other criminals but by a detective in the Metropolitan Police. Times conceal recording device in Michael Perry car as he meets Detective Sergeant John Simmons, who was taking money from a villain according to Martin as an insurance policy. Paul says John wanted to control Michael's actions. So Michael gives to the press. Times investigation builds momentum. Covert recordings reveal Michael is now being targeted by two other police officers, detectives. 2 hours after Michael Perry called Scotland Yard, Detective Sergeant Gordon Harris rings back. Times continue to record Michael conversations. Despite paying Robson and Harris to be free of the gelignite threat, he hasn't escaped their control. John, the other copper extorting him for money, offers advice on how to deal with two Scotland Yard officers. He takes another £50. Martin says Perry was being beaten by both sides. Continuing his corrupt career advice, Detective John offers Michael a deal. A license to commit crime. John knew he did them. According to Paul, you commit the crime and I will get the money. Crime reporters were in bed with the police according to Martin because they were paying for tip-offs day in, day out. Julian Mounter and Gary Lloyd broke this relationship up. 3 weeks into the Times investigation and still unaware that he's being recorded, John Simmons continues to take money from Michael Perry. According to Martin on tape, John Simmons was confirming Metropolitan Police is, at least in parts of the criminal organization the firm is in. John says if you arrested a high-profile criminal you very often got a phone call from another detective to say can anything be done, so a detective will water down the evidence, accept a bribe as the normal thing that will happen. With their secret recordings as incriminating evidence, the Times published its accounts of bribery and corruption within the Metropolitan Police Force. 10 days after the Times expose, the government instigates an investigation into corruption inside the Metropolitan Police. It will be overseen by an inspector from the Home Office. Frank, Inspector of Constabulary. Initial reaction was the allegations were valid and correct. The nature of the presentation, because of the conversations that had taken place and because of the whole background to the matter, he was satisfied that those allegations were correct. Inspector Bernard is jailed for 7 years, Sergeant Gordon Harris gets 6, both guilty of accepting bribes and preventing the course of justice. However, John Simmons managed to successfully ensure, satisfied that those allegations were correct. Inspector Bernard is jailed for 7 years, Sergeant Gordon Harris gets 6, both guilty of accepting bribes and preventing the course of justice. However, John Simmons managed to successfully ensure, else I knew. John was asked how many corrupt police did he mention? Well over, he said 100. John Simmons decided that the better part of valor is discretion. Moody gave John $2,000 to go on holiday and he was promised more than that but never came. Keeping law and order. In the late 1960s, London takes more than 20,000 officers from the city, the transport and the Metropolitan Police. Jackie says they were well respected and trusted by the public. That is what she saw most of the time. Stephen says at young age, because he had nice cars, he was constantly stopped by the police. In London, the police have the right to stop and search anyone they think is acting suspiciously. Who was stopped and how often is left unchecked, and according to Stephen, if you did not get arrested you would not be promoted, so corrupt police officers did bad things. Stephen also they was setting him by get his fingerprints on gelignites so they can bribe with money, or he will acts as informant against other criminals. 2 months after his wrongful arrest for mailbag theft, Stephen is briefed by his solicitor. Stephen pleads not guilty, but on the evidence of a corrupt detective, he's sentenced to 8 months. It would take 42 years for Stephen's conviction to be overturned and for his name to be cleared. Paul believed that the corrupt police believed they could do what they wanted. John CDR, police officer, says there was a balance there, that if they took liberty, then they could expect retribution. John DAC Police in London, most criminals were going to be drawn from the society that you were dealing with. Jackie says corrupt police officers enjoyed being in power. John Grieve corruption was not included racism, and it was endemic. Police were white male heterosexual and only recruited was white male heterosexual. Few black officers. Winston says racism stereotypes will use the N-word, Sambo, coon and rastas by police officers and beat Winston up, and then after he was forced by the police officers to admit to crimes he did not commit on the underground. Following their frame up on the underground by a corrupt detective, Winston and his 3 friends faced trial at the Old Bailey. Back in 1960 and 70 the jury would have been totally white according to Martin Old, and in front will be a black man. The victims that Winston and his friend are alleged to have robbed fail to be produced in court. Winston is sentenced to 2 years. He will have to fight for a further 47 days before the conviction is quashed and his name is cleared. John says in those days, there were lax controls, there was nobody looking for corruption, it was allowed to go ahead. Caroline writes. Campaigners say civil society depends on the police, but if you can't trust the police to effect the law that we have worked for, the whole of civil society breaks down. John says they were students who were educated, often from well-moneyed backgrounds, who felt that they had the right to do this and the police didn't have the right to sort of stop them. John says the middle class came into contact with the police until the Road Traffic Acts came in. This will be by speeding, parking and drugs. Caroline says they went after black people and long hippies who believe that they had drugs on them. Caroline had a phone line business to help young people that were having problems with the police. So the youth will not set up by planting drugs on them. One couple who fell prey to the corrupt practice of planting drugs are Simon and Georgina Hands. Georgina said everybody was on the side of the police, including relations and friends. The same verbal technique which gives storylines of what police were making up did not fit in with the young couple. They are eventually acquitted of possessing 3 pounds of cannabis. Like, share, comment, and subscribe.